Cochran?
Here.
Epley?
Here.
Gunther?
Here.
Johnson? Here. Simmons? Here.
Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We all have an agenda. Are corrections or additions, Mark?
No change.
The minutes from the 14th and 21st of November. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved for both.
Moved for both, or for support. Now, the corrections, additions, anyone? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Both the same, motion carries. Next, special order today honoring Eric Williams. We have a visitor too for you.
Where do you want?
Either place.
Yeah.
It's
Make
good.
sure that's important for you.
Well, I think you all know how good a city attorney Eric has been for this community, how long he has served this community. What you may not know, though, is Eric has been very involved with the Michigan Association of Municipal Attorneys, and I'll call them MAMAs for the rest of the year. MAMA is a group of municipal attorneys throughout the state of Michigan, city attorneys, assistant city attorneys, and some members of firms that actually represent the cities as well, so they don't have to be in-house. Eric has actually served as president of that organization. He served 2 one-year terms as president. And quite frankly, the reason why he's getting this award tonight is due to the fact that he extends himself out in assistance to other people throughout the state that need some help, need some advice, and it's always good advice. It's always fun to talk with Eric on whatever topic we're talking about. In fact, the MML has a legal defense fund, and oftentimes we seek out attorneys throughout the state of Michigan to file what we call friend of the court briefs, which are called amicus briefs. And these briefs assist either the Court of Appeals or sometimes the Supreme Court in handling a particular matter. As we point out to the court, this is important, this is why it's important, this is how it's going to affect local government. And Eric is the author of several of those briefs. In fact, he's working on one right now. So there's always that need, there's always that support that our organization has gotten from Eric. And we very much appreciate it. So I would like to award this Distinguished Municipal Attorney Award to Eric in recognition of his statewide service as well as his local service.
Speech.
I have to give Eric some time for rebuttal.
Yes.
Sure, over here maybe?
Yeah, you might.
So, I've enjoyed working for the city. It's been an immense pleasure, sometimes a challenge over the last, whatever it's been, 36 years. But in this business, you have challenges. If you didn't have challenges, you wouldn't be doing it. Same for me. And I've long enjoyed my relationship with the MAMAs, the Michigan Association of Municipal Attorneys. I was on the board probably too long, and finally said, we got to move you off there. Need some other people on the board. But that's part of how that association works. I had the pleasure of being a president there. Have written some amicus briefs in both the Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court on some kind of, some were obscure, some were very large issues. Enjoyed all of that. Still enjoy the listserv activity and giving advice to other lawyers and, sharing some knowledge and expertise, I guess. Mostly knowledge, hard to say expertise. I've always gotten something out of every MAMA conference I ever attended. So part of my enjoyment of doing this work with the city and then working with MAMA was the opportunity to always learn. Always something else out there that I didn't know about, and that allowed me to learn more from others and broaden my experience and make it easier to do the work here for the city, because I had the chance to learn from other people about how they handled those similar problems elsewhere. And then it was fun to share some of that knowledge and experience that I had with other people. And I think it collectively improves the municipal practice of law. Also, it's a unique challenge to take municipal law cases into the courts, because the courts don't see it, a lot of them, and there's somewhat of a tendency within the court system to think that the municipalities ought to be able to go figure it out for themselves and take care of it. We have to explain to the courts why we're there, why it's important, and why we need the court's help to get something done. And that's not always as easy as it first seems. And I've enjoyed that work as well. That's about all I have to say. No real rebuttal. Not like that.
Thank you, Eric. Our personal goodbye to Eric will be at a special event on the 15th.
December 15th, 1 o'clock in this room. So all of us.
Will be more personal then.
We might have cake.
Huh?
And we might have cake.
You think? You don't know yet.
I don't. I just said might. I always get told I got to go down to public safety.
Thank you for coming. Drive safely.
Drive safe.
Next is a certificate and award of financial reporting achievement to be given to Carla Staffen. Carla, on behalf of the city, we have your certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. Presented actually presents to the city, but I don't think any of us do much financial reporting. To Carla for its annual comprehensive financial report for this year ended June 30, 2021. And it's the Executive Director, Christopher Morrow. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
You want to give a speech?
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Next, in a study session, we'll have rules of procedure talked about by Amy Gillis, the city clerk. Amara?
Thank you, Mayor. We all know that we have started a new process with our commission packets, that the commission gets them a week ahead of time. We started this in October as a trial period to see if the packet getting it a week ahead of time would work. So far, I've sent out the packet. I've had to change it the next week. I changed the November 4th packet 5 times that week. The packet that I sent out is now inaccurate for the public, the commission, and staff. I don't do well with inaccurate. I like my office to be a well-run office, organized, accurate, concise. And I would think, I think the city commission wants that as well from my office. Once the packet is finalized, I should be able to move forward and work on other projects, but it's constantly being brought back to work and change the packet. I'm touching this packet too many times and become unproductive at my job, and mistakes are being made. I feel like they have taken 2 steps forward and 5 steps backward. There are other things that need my time. I cannot spend my time constantly changing the packet. There needs to be a better way, and in my opinion, this is not working. The deadlines are confusing. Everybody got this formula that we use. And I'll tell you, I thought the Easter calendar was confusing until I tried to make this up. The deadlines, I had talked to one of the examples is a good example from Dave Cushway over at Wastewater Treatment Plant. I seen him the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And he had to, unforeseeable obstacle occurred when the vendor could not honor their price for the ferric chloride, and he had to go out and rebid it. So he came up to me and said, hey, when's the next deadline? When's the next meeting? I said, December 5th. And he said, when do I need to get you your stuff? I said, 2 days ago. And he kind of looked at me like, hey, yeah, okay, no, 2 days ago. I said, the packet goes out today. he goes, okay, so when is the next commission meeting? I said, now you're on the 19th. I said, and now you need to give me that by the 6th. Oh, okay. He just kind of walked away with a, glare in his eye with a date. The other one is Trina for this right-of-way resolution. The state only gives us 30 days to be able to do this. She needed to get the deadline in before their 30 days, so she couldn't do it. So now, the deadline, she's got to go for the 19th, which the deadline is the 6th, but the meeting starts on the 19th, and will we get that permit on time? Probably not. The deadline to start working for the state. All of these documents for resolutions do not come internally, they come from outside sources. They come from the public, the state, the vendors. We don't control a lot of that. We don't do a lot. The only thing we do internally, more or less, is the position paper. A lot of this paperwork that we need to fulfill this packet comes from outside of City Hall. And just recently, marijuana has recently been relocated in the clerk's office, along with a new communications person. Which means more of my time needs to be concentrated on learning the marijuana laws and the training of new relations persons, as well as still as the deputy clerk. And frankly, I'm pretty much just wore out with these, with all the packets and having just not enough time in the day to do all of this stuff. So my recommendation, and also I'm going to have you list here from Heather on the public works side, and Mark can say a little bit on the state of Michigan side, as far as contacts that we have to have, as far as the airport and DART and all of those. My recommendation is to go back to the packets and go out on Friday. But in saying that, I would suggest that if we could possibly, to try to keep the agendas to a medium size, so that the packet is not so large so the commission can get through the packet on the weekend. We can try to do that. We can try not to make it like 17 resolutions on one and three resolutions on the next meeting. We can try to make it so that it's a little bit more manageable. So, Heather?
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. And then we can ask for questions when we're all done.
Like Tammy said, a lot of the information that we're relying on to present to you, along with our position papers, comes from an outside source. Thankfully, right now, a lot of our construction projects are coming to an end, near completion. However, the most recent change order that was presented to the commission for the well project in the amount of $22,500 and then the extension to the end of this year, that was actually presented to me about mid-October, but I couldn't bring it to the commission until about, I think it's not the first meeting in November, I believe it was the second one, or the last one that we just had. And so it delayed the process. And so internally, we have some fear that going into the next construction season, which we have many projects lined up, we just don't want to see a lot of significant delays because of the weather conditions are really what drive our outside projects.
Thank you. Mark, do you have anything to say on something?
Sure. Briefly, we haven't really had a lot of airport state contracts as of late, but that will probably change given the whole runway extension project, I'm guessing. And they are notorious for showing up, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and needing approval on the next Monday. I mean, they are always rushed. And Dial-A-Ride is the same way, because that's a lot of state contracts. So, yeah, I can certainly comment that those don't allow for a 2 or 3 week grace period. Never almost did that in my experience. So we're just, forecasting that there'll be more times we would end up changing the packet, and it just seems like the community, and really, I think the commission as well, want us to be nimble, is the best word I can think of it, and it's hard to be when you have to be set in stone 2 weeks ahead of time. And so, yeah, I think it's a challenge, big challenge. I agree with Tammy.
Mark, when we went to the new system, that was just a recommendation. We did not actually vote that, did we?
I don't believe so.
No,
because that's
kind of thing.
It's housed in our rules of procedure, which we're going to see and adopt. We have a work session next meeting on the 19th, and then we would adopt the first meeting in January. That's where the change would be made permanent, right? We've not done that.
Now, commissioners, open it up.
I would say that the request for the packets ahead of time was never meant to cause us to be staff any additional work. However, I think as much information that we can get in front of us ahead of time is helpful. I also didn't consider the packets to be a final, no changes system when they come in. I anticipated that between the mayor and the city manager, there would be changes, and that would be fine with me. What I want to try to avoid is additional work for city staff, processes that don't make sense. But I would like to get information more timely, whenever possible.
Other comments?
I find returning to the previous schedule, I find most times I'm not ready to have the packet before the day before the meeting anyway, so having it the extra week doesn't affect me, so pushing back is okay with me.
Does the commission care to have a vote on that, or is it consensus on watching everyone see what their heads are doing?
Can I ask a quick question? Tammy, for the old schedule, when is the due date for materials generally? The Tuesday before, that Friday?
The rules of procedure say the Tuesday before.
The Tuesday before. And I'm just asking this to ask it. Is there a way for us to, I don't know, are people being held to that date, and if things are coming in, what I'm gathering is obviously you have circumstances that are beyond your control with some of your vendors, with certainly the public works stuff, the construction, the materials, the weather, and so forth. I don't know if that makes any sense to create an exceptions category or not, so that you can have the bulk of what you need for that packet on Tuesday. And hold those people so if we can get it to you on Tuesday, recognizing that there may be things coming in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Am I making any sense?
Yes, you are. And I don't foresee any problems with staff. It may be some of the vendors. If I can, staff will be very good at it because that exceptions will roll over to the state vendors. Police Vanderbilt usually is notorious for last minute stuff, consumers. Mm-hmm. That will be for the outside stuff that we have no control over. And I can deal with that, but I can't deal with is having everything coming at, of course, at one day, which they usually don't. So that would work out fine.
Okay. Certainly, we definitely want to be mindful of the strain on city staff and interfering with their ability to be efficient and effective in getting the work done. So I would be fine with going back to the old system if we could figure out some way to do what we just talked about, so that it doesn't all land on you at one time, recognizing the reality on the ground of what you folks have to deal with, so that you can get yours out in a timely way, and we can get our information in time.
Anyone else?
I think I'd prefer to think it over a little bit and discuss it with the city manager a little more. And then when we have our normal meetings to establish the rules of procedures, we would start fresh in the new year with the decision that we all make. So I would agree with that.
I would go with going back to Tammy's way. I can feel the frustration, and I could be cognizant of that. And so I would be in favor of going back to the old way immediately. But if you want to have a formal vote, that'd be fine with me too. Somebody wanted a motion to go back or to stay?
Actually, would support Commissioner Simmons' idea to codify this. I mean, we're only one meeting left in this, and I think he's already acquiring items for the December 19th meeting. And it would be good for us to codify this in rules of procedures and we talk about that. Is that going to be our first January meeting?
Yeah, I will be sending the rules of procedure out to you probably tomorrow. And then we can either do it the first or second meeting in January.
But I don't anticipate something happening between now and the first meeting in January that says, oh yeah, we want to go back and stay with what that is. See what I'm saying? In other words, we may be delaying for I'm not sure which reason. That's all.
I could see us delving into this a little bit more. And I would like to do that before I bring it to a vote.
We don't even have to vote. Gee.
Thank you for bringing that to us.
So for the 19th meeting, stick with the early, whatever it's called. And then for the rules.
I will send you out tomorrow. Make sure you let me know if you have any edits, read them through very carefully. If you want to scratch out stuff or write stuff, make sure I have them so I have all of the edits. So that we, probably going to have the study session on the 3rd to go over the edits. And then, unless we have a work session, do we have a work session on it or not? I think we have a
3rd of January, I don't think we planned that. I don't think, not that I can think of it.
Okay, so it'll be just on a study session.
Yeah.
And then the second meeting we'll hold up.
Next, in the study session, Jesse Black, our Community Economic Development Specialist, will talk about the economic development strategy. Jesse?
Someone moved the cords around, so I'm just trying to figure out what goes where.
Marcus Eric blended into this.
I'm looking forward to the renovation.
We are having a whole new system, man.
Well,
If
you folks would be okay with it, you do have the entire document in front of you, so I'm happy to talk through it. Even though, unfortunately, folks, we will not have a visual up here. But I do have a draft, Emily. I do have a draft on my desk. If you wanted to grab that, it does have some handwritten notes. But I'm happy to share it with anyone in the room who would like to take a look at it. So thank you for having me here tonight, folks. I wanted to do a study session to go over the economic development strategy. This is going to be the first economic development strategy that the city of Big Rapids has had. And the purpose of this economic development strategy is to just start thinking through of what kind of economic development efforts the city would like to work towards. And I hope this will be a starting point as the city looks to update its master plan and consider what that might look like. I think this would be a great foundation to including an economic development chapter in that process. And just really helping to identify some goals and priorities for economic development, which should hopefully be evaluated on an annual basis. And so, in the beginning of the document is just a summary of key information, primarily census data, that just takes a big overarching look at the city of Big Rapids. Since I don't have it up on the screen, you will see under the population section, it does say that the city of Big Rapids has a population size of 8,976 and a median age of 22. Just last Monday, on the 28th, we had our Economic Development Strategy Committee where we went over this draft. After I met with the Planning Commission in November and got the Planning Commissioner's feedback on the document as is, and we discussed that right now, we all know that the census numbers for 2020 came in a little bit off and decreased from what we saw in the 2010 census. So Mark and I discussed about, instead of just saying that is the population size, saying it's an estimate, and I added in a follow-up sentence that talks about that the population size did decrease between the 2010 and 2020 census, and the city is exploring whether or not a census recount may be worthwhile due to the impact a population decrease has on economic development efforts. That way we are acknowledging both pieces of the puzzle, and that we're looking more into it, and that way we're not just putting out a random census number. And I'd love to ask you all in this first section of background information if you have any comments. All right, so as I started working on the draft, I did check in with some of the folks at CEDOM to get their advice and feedback on how the draft was coming together. And their advice to me was that the document was very text heavy and it would be beneficial and worthwhile to include a visual. So on page 5, you can see I put together a visual of the demographic data that's identified in that first section. And getting to section 2, the economic development process. I hosted on October 25th and 26th 2 different community input sessions. One was at the Backroom Coffee over at Topping, and the other one was right here in this room. In between both sessions, we had a turnout of about 12 people, and I wanted to hear from more members of the community, and it didn't seem it was working for their schedules to be able to make it out to those meetings, and so at this year's annual chili cook-off, Emily Schmansky and I set up with the outreach materials that I had. We were able to engage over 40 residents at the chili cook-off, and it was super interactive and really cool. And through those different sessions, people identified the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that they felt presented the city when it comes to economic development. And in the front, on this page, on page 6, is a brief summary of what that feedback looks like. And in the back of the document, in the appendix, you can see an exhaustive list of exactly the things people listed and shared with us for feedback. And then going on to section 3, it identifies the local, county, and regional economic development goals. In the document you have before you, you have the local and regional goals. Since the Right Place is our regional planning partner, I pulled from their strategic plan update in 2020 as to what goals they were identifying for this region. And they're currently underway a new strategic planning process in 2022. And I went over this with Kelly to make sure that all of the goals and objectives were still falling in line. And they do. And I also learned from her for the county economic goals, which I was able to add in this updated document, is that the county is representing us, Mecosta County, on a regional child care coalition with 3 other counties from January 2023 to January 24, as well as our county economic development director is working on touring college towns across the state to get a better understanding of their partnerships and functioning processes, so we can learn from those other college towns around us. And I will pause there. Do you have any comments or questions in that section? So moving on to section 4, the actual economic development strategy and some of the strategic objectives. During this meeting last week, the second objective that's identified for expanding broadband access, we had a larger conversation that at this time, the city is not in a position to take the full ownership of that broadband access. And it poses more of a larger discussion of what partnerships should be formed and who really is the person that should be responsible for that. Based on some of the other objectives that the city is working towards and the resources and capacity that are available, we decided to start with some of these other objectives, and then down the line, it's always a conversation to come back to. And as we took out that objective of expanding broadband access, we replaced it by adding a section that discusses expanding child care opportunities and the importance of having child care so that way folks are able to get to work and avoid scheduling conflicts. I will send you all an email copy right when I go back to my desk after this with all these changes in there. And I highlighted them in red as well, so you'll be able to easily point them out. And instead of talking through all the words of the strategic objectives, in section 5, I wanted to condense it into an implementation matrix. And so that way it is more concise in a chart form, and it can identify the different objectives, what status, what projected timeline, who are our direct partners involved, so we know who we can tap on and ask to come to the table, and then just a brief description. And we wanted to make this useful as well, so we decided it would be helpful to identify some immediate next steps that can be taken right after this plan is adopted. And during the conversation in our group meeting last week, after we had to talk about taking broadband access out of the plan. We did decide to also take out that third bullet point about exploring the opportunities for partnerships with Project Moonlight. And then in that third bullet point, in the beginning of the sentence, we did change it to take out the DBA board and director, and just started the sentence with conduct entrance and exit interviews. And that's all for this draft right now. And if you have any questions or comments right now, happy to talk about them. But if not, I will be in the office for another 2 weeks, and I am more than happy to chat whenever you would like to.
Thank you, Justin. Questions? Any questions?
I do have one. Can you explain to me again the expanding broadband and why the committee felt that it was up to put that off?
Yeah, so we were talking about if right now it is the direct city's role with the capacity and resources that are available to tackle what expanding broadband means. We always talk about expanding broadband access, but I think it led us to kind of look deeper into it of what does that really mean for us as the city. I think it's something new and we have a lot to learn, but based on the discussions we had with Kelly in the room, from Kelly's position on the county and as the economic development director, she's been working on regional plans about broadband, and so she said that has been more under her wing right now, and it wouldn't really be necessary for the city to take full ownership. Am I communicating that right, Mark? Do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in if that's okay.
And that makes sense. Everything that you just said makes sense. I just had to hear it one more time to make sure I understood it.
And I think it's the larger discussion across the country, honestly, of who is really responsible for expanding broadband. So I think it's a conversation that will continue to be had. But it's just a buzzword right now. And so that was the conclusion we came to last Monday.
Okay, I thought that company was here in town putting it all over under the ground. Isn't that okay?
That's what I was going to say. So Point Broadband is delivering broadband access to every address in the city.
Right. Plus we have cable.
Plus we have charter. So it's hard for me to understand
what Kelly was doing. The rural areas were their emphasis, where they have nothing.
Right.
I think, right, Bill?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So we're pretty well covered.
Well, if it's available at your property, I'm not sure it's the city's role to whether or not you sign up or not.
But the outlying areas in the county are in need.
Right. I don't see a city role in that myself. But that was our discussion. Yeah.
Do you have a question, Roseanne, on that?
Yes, I do, and it's a dumb question.
No,
but you know me and my technology now, it's zero. What is broadband? How does it differ from charter?
I'm no expert, Rosemary, but I think that we're talking one and the same. Broadband, in my mind, is internet access. Now, there's different levels, right? You can buy the charter 1 gig, 2 gig. I mean, you can buy a broader volume of ability to access it or use it. But when you hear broadband, I think internet access, and that's what I would say.
Do you have other questions for Jesse before she starts? Yes.
So I just want to say, wow, what a lot of work. Thank you so much this is really a lot of work to collate and put together into some kind of coherent messaging. It's abundantly clear that this is going to be ongoing for years. There are a lot of moving parts to this, and you have a number of partners that you're trying to coordinate their efforts. But I think this is an excellent start. You've outlined the issues beautifully, and I want to thank you for that hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Others? Questions? Comments? Public? Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Under general business, the resolution accepting a proposal from police for, professional engineering on the Hills and Mitchell Creek Booster Station. Public comment on anything that's not on the agenda? He just, anyone, just left, so. Anybody? Public comment? Emily? That's it. Thank you. I raised some issues with Mark every time we meet on this particular resolution because it angers me that we would have to re-engineer a project that was engineered by somebody else before to adequately cover the Hills Mitchell Creek, which are not part of the city. We provide the water, and now it's not adequate in its pressure or whatever that means. But somebody had engineered that, and it was to cover that area. So now that we want to redo that whole station, and it's going to not be a cheap project. The engineering, $67,000. You can guess it'll be $1 million project. When an engineering firm supposedly engineered that project. So is there no recourse? Eric, is there recourse?
I'm not sure there is, but I'd like a chance to look at it before you folks wade into this. My understanding from the background is, limited background that I got, is that this system was accepted. I don't remember if the city accepted it or Mr. Stanek, did the council accept it first?
Yeah. That was before my time.
That's worth looking into. My recollection is that the entity that built it foundered or went bankrupt or closed. So there may not be any direct recourse. But there's an open question in my mind as to whether or not that whole section should perhaps have a special assessment on the properties up there if it's a system-wide redo of a system that wasn't designed correctly to begin with. And maybe there's enough money in the current water system to take on that expense. But if that is the way it's going to go, it raises at least an initial question in my mind as to whether or not those property owners in that area should have to pay some portion of it. Similar to if that route was planned and extended up there, usually there's going to be cost for either the developers or the property owners to get a new line and service a new area. Whether we must do tap-in fees as well as some of the cost. I think that's worth looking at. Again, whether or not any of those apply to this project before you launch the funding, and then perhaps raise that question later in the game. I don't know if the property owners out there have been asked what they need and how much they're willing to pay, and if they think even know that it's going on. I'd like a chance to do a little of that, or maybe get it started. I won't be here long enough to get it done.
So, do we know that the system was incorrectly designed?
We know it doesn't work very well given the current
conditions.
Current conditions. And our trouble is all of our predecessors who put it in place, right? Township, city, everybody here, there's nobody here that was responsible for it, which is probably a good thing at this point. There's two pumps that run at the base of the hill every single time the water is turned on in any one of those houses. One of those pumps has to be on. That's the way the system is built. There's no buffer. So, like, if you have ever lived in a situation where you weren't on city water and you had a well and a drain field septic system, you'll know that you have a little tank in your basement, right? And that little tank is there to buffer that exact circumstance. Even in one house that, I turn the tap on, you don't want that pump just cycling on and off, on and off. And that, on a massive scale, that's what's happening at the Hills and Mitchell Creek, and it's only going to get worse. So the life of those pumps is certainly circumspect, and we have had individual complaints from the property owners that their pressure isn't good because maybe the pump just went off and somebody over there just turned it on. That's one set of problems. The other set of problems is there's fire hydrants up there. And that becomes even greater problem if you're trying to draw a massive amount of water out from a fire hydrant. Can those pumps keep up? And the answer is no. So we have a problem. And the police is proposing a way to fix the problem, but us studying it more, talking about it more, getting more information is not a problem. Mayor and commissioners, we can take our time. There's nothing that says you have to vote on this tonight.
And the firemen saying there's no pressure at the hydrants. Well, throughout Big Rapids Township, there are a lot of places without fire hydrants. They bring a tanker truck up and put out the fire, right?
This is very true.
Any comments, Bill?
I've heard these complaints for 10 years now, but I've been in it, and they haven't changed much. So, is there a hurry to this? No. It's the same problem. They are building a lot more houses up there, though. And I was told at one time that might help it, but I'm not sure that has.
And they are just another probably piece of information for you is I believe, I'll look at you, Bill, the township had to redo some of the sewer system that was inadequately put in.
We put money into that about 3 years ago. It was put in terrible.
Did the township special assessor charge for that?
We did that.
We can bring it back, Mayor. And we can have water plant folks here, we could have firemen here, we could have more, we could have diagrams of the plant and how it works. You raise good questions.
I would support bringing it back at a later date with more information.
So
Do we need a motion to table, or what's the formal wording we need to use?
It's probably better to do a motion to table to the next meeting, or
Prior to me taking more time, I made a motion.
I know.
I can bring it back anytime, but
So,
how do we want to handle it?
I think we could go with this lack of a motion and a resolution.
You could just ask the manager to bring it back at a different time.
I would prefer. I think anybody else. Okay, Mark, can you bring it back?
We will, and we'll have more information for you at the current.
Why wouldn't the Big Rapids Township have to put $1 million into those pump stations? They're getting the taxes out of all those people and all that.
Well, the funds are designed so that tax money is not used to fund water system improvement. So in theory, all the users, of which those township residents are water customers, pay into a fund that is there to fix problems. And this is a problem. So
Take a long time for 10 houses to pay off $1 million for some pumps.
Very true. Long time. Very true.
I have been told though half a lot up there is sold now.
Oh, really?
Of the 50, they've sold over half of them. Now I know one bought a couple of them, somebody else bought 4 or 5, so they may be trying to avoid neighbors, but they have sold over half a lot now.
They're waiting for Goshen.
And this is before that even, but all the lots going up the hill there, are sold too. Besides 50, half the 50 up on the side.
So the problems, if we have more customers, that's even going to expose our problems in a greater way. So we'll bring it back to you, Mayor.
Heather, do your water plant people get a lot of complaints directly?
We hear from the users on occasion. I can tell you that the water superintendent probably can name off people's names. I don't have any contact with them, but
Water pressures are always
basically exactly what the city manager said is that there's times where the pump might shut off and then somebody turns on the water and it's a location. But it's true. It does run all the time. And we've repaired the pump sometimes.
Did we replace the pump other?
No, we did some repairs because it was inside of what was like a little shed, and then we took an old AT&T building and put it over the pumps that are existing now, and that was our opportunity time to do some repairs.
We put VFDs on that.
Okay. I think
variable frequency drives, which make it so it's not like the pump's either at 100% or at 0. It cycles it up in a softer manner, and that makes a longer life of the pump, which we put down. I think we did that.
That's what we did.
Thank you.
We'll bring it back.
Next is resolution approving the lease for office space from Integrity Air.
And then you just pick up the vision.
We have a resolution amending the city of Big Rapids tax statement.
I've been handling that with you, Mayor. I'll just give you a short reminder that this has been in front of you 2 or 3 times. It's a policy that needed to be updated. We did the update, streamlined it, even corrected the last typo, I believe. The last time it was before you, you folks didn't have any particular questions or objections, but you had a little more time to look at it. So I believe it's ready for you simply to adopt.
Questions for anyone? Do I hear a motion for the resolution? Motion support for a resolution amending the city tax abatement policy. Further questions, comments? Kim?
Cochran?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Thank you. Mark, the office space for Integrity Air.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have a lease that's in front of you. Integrity Air operates out of our airport. They have housed their airplane there, and now they are interested in having some office space. We have had Velocity Systems rent this space in the past, and they no longer do that, so it's available. $400 a month plus some utilities. So I think this is a positive move, and happy to continue our partnership with Integrity Air. It's been great to work with that deal.
That's Heidecker Weekly.
It is.
So here, motion with the resolution to lease some space.
So moved. Support.
Motion support. Questions?
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution appointing West Central Michigan Regional Planning Commission members. It is Emily Shemansky and Jennifer Cochran. Mark, you want to tell people what that is?
Certainly. We are a member of the West Michigan Regional Planning Commission, and our planning staff has historically been on their board. And Commissioner Cochran has served for a number of years on there. They have a SEDS committee, which is their economic development wing of the West Michigan Regional Planning, because regional planning commissions have a clearinghouse for EDA grants. And so Cindy Klaus in the past, and Suzanne, and now Flora would be appointed on their SEDS committee. So we thank all of those folks for volunteering their time and talents. They also encourage having a public or a private sector member of the community. We've struggled with that over time, having that continuously built. So there may be opportunity for others to do it, but they're glad that these folks are willing to participate.
In the letter from Mr. B.
Davey.
He really encourages us to have a community member from the city on the board, but apparently nobody does.
Eric Williams might qualify as that.
That's right.
Not quite yet.
Is there a motion for the resolution?
Support.
Motion and support. Questions?
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes. No work session. Unscheduled business for commissioners or others? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll move to adjourn.
So I should get an award